Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what is making the headlines with the Daily Mail's consultant editor, Andrew Pearce, and the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, with us from now until just before midnight. Oh, Andrew, you're very short. We can fix that, I'm sure. We'll elevate his chair. There we go. Anyway, front pages while he does that. Ahead of tomorrow's elections, The Guardian reports that some Tory candidates are seeking to distance themselves from Boris Johnson by branding themselves local Conservatives. The Daily Mail carries an attack by Boris Johnson on what he calls liberal left lawyers trying to block his plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The FT leads with the latest moves by the US Federal Reserve, but also features the disagreements between certain EU countries over how to handle a ban on Russian oil, which has been proposed. As it did last night, the Telegraph leading with calls for an inquiry into the use of French Exocet missiles during the Falklands War. And the Metro hears that the shirt in which Diego Maradona won the 1986 World Cup quarter-final for Argentina by scoring a goal against England with a handball has sold for £7.1 million. Well, a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. We'll hope to bring the other papers in. They're all hanging out for the Champions League, no doubt. But Andrew and Kevin are here with us now. So to the elections we go. We can't talk about it after midnight, so better make hay now. A bit of expectation management being brought in by both sides, I think, about this, don't you, Andrew? But what should we be looking out for?
Well, it's always difficult, Anna, and good evening, because turnout's very low. About 5,000 seats are being fought. The Tories have told us, the Tories say that if anything above 800 is going to be a bad night, but some people tell me they'll probably lose nearer 400. Labour will probably, what Labour want, the big thing for Labour is to come second in Scotland, replacing the Tories who've been second for quite a while behind the SNP. But they want some of those big prizes like Wandsworth, Westminster, which have been stubbornly Tory, even in bad years for the Tories. Even when Theresa May was very unpopular, Ian Duncan Smith was unpopular, they held on to those sort of constituencies. But so some of those big flagship boroughs will be the prize for Labour. I think they'll do well, Labour, in London, because it's increasingly a less and less Conservative city. And as The Guardian says on its front page, a lot of councils, the Tories, are pitching it as the local Tory. They've been doing that actually since 2019, actually. That's when it was first registered by Conservative Centre Office, because Theresa May was so unpopular. She lost, by the way, 1,400 seats in the local elections in 2019, and she was gone weeks later. If Boris Johnson loses 1,400 seats, I think he'll be gone too. But I still don't think the local elections will be what decide Boris Johnson's fate. I think that will be other factors, the cost of living, Sue Gray's report when that comes out, and other factors.
OK, Kevin, hold your thought. I know you're itching to come in. Just a bit of breaking news and sad news, certainly, for fans of Manchester City out of the Champions League, not through to the final against Real Madrid, 6-5, losing on aggregate. Certainly, that means it will be a Liverpool versus Real Madrid final on the 28th of May in Paris. All hoping for an all-England final, of course, not to be, with the Spanish team beating Manchester City 6-5. Anyway, sad news. I know you're a football fan. I'm looking at Kevin, not Andrew, but yes, I know. I mean, a very stressful game for everybody to watch, certainly.
Anna, it's fantastic for Real Madrid, who just don't know when they're beaten, but how Manchester City can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. You get the 90 minutes and you're going through and you throw it away. And after losing the final last year, I mean, it's a disaster for them. But, you know, if you're a football fan in Britain, probably apart from some parts of Manchester and maybe Everton now, you can back Liverpool quite happily. Well, I will, because Sunderland never compete at this level, so I don't feel any rivalry. If it was Newcastle, I'd have to think otherwise, though.
Yes, exactly. One day. But let's head to The Guardian and return to our conversation about the elections taking place tomorrow, and this idea of whether Johnson is now a hindrance to the Conservative Party, you know, the great Heineken politician who could touch parts of the electorate that nobody could. And this sort of suggests that it might be backfiring, according to this Guardian article.
Yeah, he's gone from, as you say, the Heineken politician who could touch places others couldn't, to almost kryptonite for the Tories, which is why they're distancing locally themselves from him. I think he's on very few Conservative Party leaflets. He's on a lot of Labour and Liberal Democrat and possibly SNP and Plaid and Green too, because he's lost his mojo. He looks a haunted and hounded man. And Andrew's right. I don't think these local elections, whatever happens tomorrow and we get the results Friday, won't do for him. But I'm told losing Wakefield could. And certainly if Tiverton and Homerton, where the Conservatives have a 24,000 majority, that's bigger than the seats they lost in North Shropshire and Cheshire and Amersham. If that fell to the Lib Dems, who are the most likely challengers, although they finished third last time behind Labour, if that falls, then I think Johnson would fall with it.
Yeah, is a no confidence vote looming for Johnson? That's what the Metro asks in its inside pages, and also the Environment Secretary George Eustice being branded out of touch and patronising after telling shoppers to beat the cost of living crisis by switching to value brands. I suppose the point he's making that every cut you make helps you out, but still, the out of touch issue, Andrew, is, you know, it's a really tricky one for the government. If people think the government can't help them in any way, which is what it feels like to people.
Yeah, you know, it's so patronising when politicians, cabinet ministers earning £160,000 a year and have a chauffeur-driven car tell shoppers, mums, but not often mums or dads who are struggling with the shopping bill, buy a cheaper brand when they wouldn't know a cheaper brand if they fell over one in a supermarket aisle. It's just really, really crass and stupid. Look, the cost of living crisis is the big problem facing this country. Forget Partygate. Many people are genuinely struggling to pay their fuel bills. People are worrying about food bills. They're worrying even more because we have a cold winter coming up this year. We know the price cap's going to be lifted again. And I think the government needs to do more and soon on the cost of living crisis. I think it was insane to put up national insurance. I know the money is allegedly to cut the NHS waiting list. Well, we'll see if that ever happens, because often big infusions of cash to the NHS just disappear into a black hole. So those sort of remarks by George Eustice are frankly really insulting to voters and families. And when you've been in power for 12 years, that sort of remark does suggest to people that they are a bit out of touch. He's a good bloke, George Eustice, you know, if you talk to him one-to-one, and I'm sure he's kicking himself for saying it, but the fact is he did say it.
Yes, and the actions of the European Union today, this proposal to ban Russian oil imports, obviously being fought by a number of nations, Hungary, Slovakia, you know, finding it tricky, certainly. But already 4% rise in crude oil prices on the day or immediately afterwards. You know, the pressure will keep coming if you start cutting off the avenues that you get this stuff, Kevin.
It is. It's a price of supporting Ukraine and taking a principled position against Russia after the unprovoked invasion. You'll pay an economic price. I suspect that down the line there's going to be some very cheap deals for Russian gas and oil if European customers are not taking it. But the pressure is going to get worse. The Financial Times leading on the Fed in the US, putting up interest to 0.5%. They're going to go up again in the UK as the bank tries to curb inflation, but it will really sting people if they haven't to pay more on their mortgages, as they have to pay more in shops and their wages aren't going up as high, and the government is taking more in taxation. I understood what George Eustice was saying, and I have a little sympathy for him, but people are making those choices themselves. They don't want a minister in a government which has made it worse, not better, to be lecturing them. I recall Edwina Currie when she was a minister back in the 80s when Thatcher was Prime Minister, saying when people are struggling with their bills, well, she said, well, if it's cold, put on another jumper. Well, yeah, in one way it was reasonable advice, but people don't want to be forced to do it and told to do it by a minister. They want the ministers, the government, to help them, not to be lecturing them.
You had a little smile at the mention of Thatcher there, Andrew, I have to say, as soon as you mentioned it.
He's going to pop out into his shrine.
No, listen, I was just thinking of Edwina Currie. I think she also said wear a woolly hat in bed.
There we go. Those were the
Because she
days,
said
eh?
you lose a lot of heat through. She said you lose a lot of heat through your head, so wear a woolly hat in bed. And some people, it divided the nation. Was she giving sensible advice? Yes, but was it patronising? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Did John Major wear a woolly hat in bed? Do we ever know that? Or...
I've never been privy to his bedroom secrets, but if you read Edwina Curry's book, I'm sure he may disclose it.
I would really like
I think
to
we found out something about his underwear, and it was big, grey and baggy, not very...
Oh, they were blue. Okay. They were big and blue.
Big and blue, very Tory. Yeah.
Let's stop, shall we? Anyway, let's go to the Daily Mail. Andrew, your paper, you might as well do this one. Question, did the Rwanda plan stop the movement of migrants across Channel? The answer, it seems, is no, and it was the weather. So what is Boris Johnson complaining about in this front page?
Well, already, apparently, the legal challenges are flying in thick and fast. Of course they are, from the great human rights crusading lawyers that Kevin Maguire loves so much. They will try and tie this plan up in legal knots, doing everything they can to, even if they try to deport them to Rwanda, there'll be lawyers appealing and counter-appealing. And this was always going to be a battle. And I think actually it's a battle the government wants, because they'll point to the Labour Party, which has got no plan other than to say everybody can come in, anybody they like can come in. We won't send anybody back. And they'll fight the lawyers, and they'll try to say to people, we at least are trying to do something to stop this appalling convoy of misery coming across the English Channel.
OK, Kevin.
Yeah. Carl, where do you start? One, that is not Labour's position. Just let anybody.
Yes, it is.
Represented. Two, you talk about a convoy of misery coming over the Channel. What do you think you're going to be sending to Rwanda? Three, the reason people aren't going to Rwanda, and the government, Priti Patel and Johnson said it would start this month, is they haven't got their scheme in place yet. And fourthly, we live in a country of the rule of law. People have rights. It's not just little mini dictators telling them what must happen. You have a right, and the government has to comply with its own laws. And there will be challenges, legal challenges, and they've got to be heard. Now, we need a system that works, that's effective and efficient. We don't have one, but we live in a country of the rule of law. Andrew.
Okay, I just want to squeeze one more.
So you respect lawyers. You should respect lawyers representing people. It might be you one day.
Has an open door policy.
You might need a lawyer yourself.
Labour has an open door policy. All come in. You're all welcome anytime you like. That's Labour's policy.
It's just ludicrous.
Yes, it is.
Squeeze in another story, if that's OK, gentlemen, which is that it makes a change to Daily Mail not to lead on Beergate, Andrew, to be fair. And the Daily Telegraph quoting Sir Peter Fahy, former head of Greater Manchester Police, suggesting that Durham Constabulary should, possibly think about looking again at the case in light of new information. But, I mean, has this been politicking by the Daily Mail, do you think, ahead of the elections to draw attention to this?
It's not just the Daily Mail, even the woke BBC have woken up to this story and are reporting the fact that Keir Starmer is refusing to answer very basic questions. He's been evasive. What he's doing what he's accusing Boris Johnson of for a very long time. He's been lying about what happened in Durham, in that Durham Labour constituency office that night. Everybody can see through it. With the Sun reported this week, £200 worth of curry was delivered for 30 guests. The story has changed from Keir Starmer. He's gone from saying we were working, we had a break from work, we had some food, and then we went back to work. He's now saying we were working continuously. You know, when politicians change their story, Anna, they're on very thin ice, and that ice is beginning to crack under Mr. Starmer.
Very quickly.
Durham police looked at this last spring and decided no rules were broken because at the time you could reasonably have a meal at work when you were involved in business, and this was campaigning. What happened with Johnson is the Met Police didn't look at it at the time, and then when they did look at it, they fined him and found he broke the law. The Tories are trying to muddy the water, and the Mail are playing along with the game. That's what it is.
Right.
You can see the politics in it.
OK, we will move on. Would you pay £7 million for the shirt that Maradona used to cheat his way to the World Cup? Well, someone did. We will discuss that in just a moment. Well, Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me once again, Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire. Welcome back to both of you. Day two for the Daily Telegraph on the Exocet Falklands story, Andrew. Tell us a bit more about their persistence with this.
Well, this started in Charles Moore's excellent column in the Telegraph. He's a former editor of the Telegraph, the official biographer of Margaret Thatcher. So he reminded readers a story that I think was probably in his memoirs, that when the Ministry of Defence, when we went to war with Argentina, the Ministry of Defence suspected that there was a device by which you could disable the Exocet, which was the Argentinians' most lethal weapon. It took out HMS Sheffield, of course, with the 40th anniversary this week. 20 servicemen died. They've got a former commander of the HMS Sheffield saying the French have questions to answer. But look, this was 40 years ago. Are the French really going to get into a conversation about that now? I'm not sure. What I think is really interesting about the 40th anniversary of the Falklands, Anna, is there is to be a big service where servicemen and women who died, particularly people like those who were on the Sheffield, will be remembered. I think it's at the Arboretum. You think Prince Andrew will be there? Big public place for him because, of course, he played an heroic role in the Falklands. He flew decoy helicopters to try and divert Argentine planes from British ships.
And a final minute for you. Apologies for rushing you. The Metro, the Hand of Ward, the Hand of God. It's the front page of the Times as well, which is just in one of those papers, obviously waiting for the football. But anyway, interesting amount of money for this incident, which goes down in footballing history for England. Kevin?
Absolutely, £7,142,500 for the cheats shirt back in 1986. So he used his hand to get the ball over Peter Shilton. It was owned by Steve Hodge, who was in the team, and I think he owns it, so you get the money. I'd been on loan at a museum, the football museum in England, but it looks like some people from Abu Dhabi have bought it. But that's a hell of a lot of money for.
What do they want? What do they want it for?
They'll display it, I suppose, get people to go to Abu Dhabi on holiday.
It's a moment of history, isn't it? Let's be honest with you. But the Times,
no,
as you can see...
Yeah, it's still a lot.
It's a cheat shirt. It's a cheat shirt. He cheated.
Yeah, well, there we are. It's a moment of history still. But anyway, the Times just very quickly leading on inflation, expected to rise to the highest for 13 years. And the paper saying the Bank of England is forecast to raise interest rates from 0.75% to 1%. We will talk about that in our 11 o'clock bulletin when we see you again. Thank you both very much indeed.